A Russian strike on a residential building in Kryvyi Rih killed 3 children and a woman. At least 8 people were killed in Israel's northernmost attack on Lebanon in a year.
Following the collapse of the country's ruling coalition last week, Germany is set to hold snap elections in February.
The negotiations agenda has been agreed upon, and the 2024 United Nations Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan has now started in earnest. On top of the agenda is a new climate finance regime. Our correspondent in Baku has more.
It's day 2 here at COP29 in Baku, following an agreement that was reached on Monday among countries to adopt part of a carbon trading deal to help poorer nations deal with the effects of climate change. Today, the 2-day Leaders Action Summit has begun. We already heard from UN Secretary General Guterres, who told world leaders that, quote, on climate finance, the world must pay up or humanity will pay the price. More leaders are expected to take the floor later on today. We got the chance to speak with David Wosko from the World Resources Institute about the summit's highlights so far and what to expect in the coming hours. Take a listen.
Well, so far, really, the gears have started turning. That's the most important thing. Took a little bit of time, but the agenda for the negotiations was agreed yesterday, and negotiations got down to real business today. And so we'll see by the end of the day how things are progressing. The discussions on the new finance goal kicked off this morning, and so that'll be important to get a sense of through the course of the day. Starting this afternoon is leaders, heads of state, heads of government from nearly 100 countries who are here to talk about their plans on climate action. I think the key is to hear them talk about their level of ambition, what they want to see their countries and the European Union do going forward. The European Union's next climate commitment is a key part of that. I think there's a complicated process to go through within the European Union around that, but that's quite critical. The official deadline for these commitments is February. Not all countries may meet it, but I think it is a deadline that the European Union needs to meet. And so it'll be important to hear from leaders how they see that, what they want in terms of the level of ambition, but also how they see that process. The other thing that's critical here is on finance. That's really what the negotiations here at this summit are going to boil down to. COP29 is really a finance COP.
A Russian missile hit a 5-story residential building in the Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih on Monday, killing 3 children and a woman, local authorities said. On Tuesday morning, the city's governor said another 14 people were injured. The attack came as Russian glide bombs, drones, and ballistic missiles pounded cities across southern and eastern Ukraine on Monday, injuring dozens. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met in Kyiv on Monday with the European Union's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell, discussing EU support for Ukraine and urging European unity. Both Russia and Ukraine are waiting to see how Washington will change its policy on the war after Donald Trump takes office as the U.S. president in January. The U.S. is the biggest provider of military help to Ukraine, but Trump has criticized the Biden administration for giving Kyiv tens of billions of dollars of aid. At least 8 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on northern Lebanon on Monday, according to Lebanon's health ministry. The attack marks the northernmost point attacked so far by Israeli forces since a year of fighting, in a village far from the Hezbollah militant group's main areas of influence in the south and east. On Tuesday, at least 14 Palestinians were killed in 2 separate strikes on northern Gaza, one of which hit a cafeteria in the Muwasi humanitarian zone west of the city of Khan Yunis. Officials at the Nasser hospital where the victims were taken said 2 children were among the dead. Meanwhile, Israel's finance minister said he will push for Israel to annex parts of the occupied West Bank after Donald Trump takes office.
שקובעת שממשלת ישראל תפעל מול הנשיא החדש מול הממשל החדש, של הנשיא טראמפ, מול הקהילה הבינלאומית, להחלת הריבונות הישראלית ביהודה ושומרון, בהכרה אמריקאית ובינלאומית, ולסיום הסכסוך הישראלי-ערבי במזרח התיכון.
The call was quickly condemned by EU top diplomat Josep Borrell in a post on X, who called it a clear step towards illegal annexation.
Germany is set to hold snap elections on the 23rd of February, that is according to domestic media reports. It comes after internal conflict left the country's ruling coalition ruptured last week. The so-called traffic light coalition, made up of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats, the Liberal FDP and the Greens, collapsed on 6 November after Scholz fired Finance Minister Christian Lindner. Scholz previously suggested a no-confidence vote to be held on the 15th of January, with elections following around March. But this was rejected by Friedrich Merz, head of the country's largest opposition party, CDU, who argued that Scholz's government were no longer able to claim a parliamentary majority in order to run the country effectively. Local media reports say that the leaders of the conservative Christian Democratic Union and Scholz's Social Democrats reached the agreement on Tuesday, with a special session planned for the evening to discuss further action.
Thousands of anti-government protesters marched in the Serbian capital, demanding the resignation of top officials after a concrete roof at a railway station collapsed and killed 14 people earlier this month. Those rallying in Belgrade blamed the collapse of the roof on rampant corruption and sloppy renovation work on the station building in the northern Serbian city of Novi Sad. The several thousand protesters demanded that the Serbian Prime Minister and his government step down and that those responsible for the collapse be arrested. Authorities have opened an investigation and the Serbian Construction Minister resigned last week. But no one has yet been charged with the incident, which occurred on November the 1st. Serbian government officials have promised full accountability, but there is widespread skepticism as the populace control both the police and the judiciary. Parts of Spain recently flooded by deadly, devastating flash floods are now facing the buildup of rubbish and accompanying rats and health issues. Local authorities are calling for the organisation of military trucks to take rubbish from the areas affected to recycling and waste management plants. Though plants might not be that far away, congestion and ruined roads means it takes a long time for lorries to arrive there. The buildup of rubbish has created a public health problem, which was then exacerbated by the proliferation of rats following the flood. Almost 2 weeks after the floods, rescue teams in Valencia are working against the clock to locate the people still missing. The search efforts are intensifying in coastal parts of the region after floodgates linking the rivers and the sea were opened to facilitate the search for missing persons.
In a defeat for climate activists, a Dutch appeals court has overturned a landmark ruling in favor of energy company Shell. The environmental group Milieudefensie originally filed the case, which ordered Shell to cut its carbon emissions by net 45% by 2030 compared to 2019 levels.
Shell heeft namelijk voor scope 1 en 2 een specifieke reductiedoelstelling vastgesteld die inhoudt dat haar scope 1 en 2 emissies in 2030 met 50% zijn verminderd ten opzichte van 2016. Verder volgt uit de door Shell aangeleverde documenten dat zij in 2023 al een reductie had bewerkstelligd van 31%.
Activists who had gathered on the courthouse steps responded with emotion, but Milieudefensie Director Donald Pols pledged to continue the fight against climate change.
Ik ben hier echt door geraakt. Dit had het moment moeten zijn waar we echt de doorbraak had kunnen realiseren in de strijd tegen gevaarlijke klimaatverandering. Dat is vandaag niet gelukt. Maar de strijd tegen gevaarlijke klimaatverandering is een marathon. Niet een sprint en de race is pas begonnen.
The court emphasized that protection against climate change is a human right, but that oil and gas companies have their own responsibility to protect that, adding that there is no law to prescribe specific CO2 reductions. Tuesday's civil ruling can still be appealed to the Dutch Supreme Court.
Italian authorities say they have dismantled a network of European art forgers who sold fake artworks with a potential market value of about 200 million euros. Authorities on Monday said the suspects made fake Warhols, Banquis, and Picassos and then tried to sell them to unsuspecting buyers. Italy's Special Art Police said the seizures in 4 countries included France, Spain, and Belgium and netted about 2,100 fake works that could have done massive economic damage. According to officials, the investigation began in 2023 when Italian authorities discovered 200 fakes during the search of the home of a Pisa businessman. The investigation then prompted them to monitor e-commerce sites of auction houses to see if others were involved in the network. Authorities say 38 people have been placed under investigation over the fraud.
Euronews. The news.